Early this year, Donald Trump just returned to the White House as the 47th President of the United States. The media focused on the headlines, the speeches, the scandals, but they missed the most powerful man you've never heard of. His name is Sergio Gor, and he's the hidden architect behind Trump's comeback. He built the media empire that kept Trump relevant after January 6th. He raised over $70 million for the 2024 campaign. He now controls who gets hired or blacklisted in the executive branch, and yet almost no one knows his name. That's not a coincidence. That's the point. So who is Sergio Gor, and why are there so many unanswered questions about how he got here? The deeper you dig, the weirder it gets. Welcome to the shadow machine behind Donald Trump's second presidency. Sergio Gor. If you've never heard of him, that's exactly how he likes it. The 38-year-old operates in the shadows of American politics, wielding enormous influence while staying largely invisible to the public eye. He's the co-founder of the publishing house that kept Trump financially afloat during his darkest political hours. He's the fundraiser who raised over $70 million for Trump's 2024 campaign. And now he's the man responsible for hiring 4,000 federal employees across the entire executive branch. Most people have no idea who he is, but his fingerprints are all over the Trump political machine. When Trump was banned from social media and struggling to stay relevant after January 6th, Gor helped create a parallel media ecosystem that not only kept Trump in the spotlight, but made him millions of dollars in the process. When Trump needed loyal foot soldiers for his return to power, Gor became the gatekeeper who decided who was worthy of serving in the administration. His name keeps coming up in reports about staffing problems in the Trump administration. Multiple news outlets describe serious issues with how political appointees are being vetted and hired. There are reports of anti-Trump officials somehow making it into key positions. There are complaints about the slow pace of filling crucial roles. And at the center of all these problems is the Office of Presidential Personnel, run by, you guessed it, Sergio Gor. This is what we found. He was born allegedly in Malta, though Maltese officials can't confirm his birth there. A former congressional staffer who colleagues describe as a backstabbing opportunist. A media entrepreneur who helped Trump make millions from books filled mostly with other people's work. And now a White House official who hasn't even submitted the basic paperwork for his own security clearance, despite being responsible for vetting thousands of federal employees. The Washington Post called him someone who falls somewhere on the spectrum between Renaissance man and henchman. That's probably the most accurate description you'll find of Sergio Gor, because depending on who you ask, he's either a brilliant political operator or a dangerous opportunist who's managed to fool his way into one of the most powerful positions in government. But understanding how this happened is crucial to understanding how power really works in modern American politics. So let's stick to the idea that he was born on November 30th, 1986, in Malta. He emigrated to the United States with his family when he was 12 years old, settling in Los Angeles. He went to George Washington University and then began a fairly typical career path for ambitious young Republicans in Washington. He worked for the Republican National Committee, served as staff for several House conservatives, including Michelle Bachmann and Steve King, and eventually became communications director for Senator Rand Paul. But according to people who worked with him during those early years, there was always something off about him. The Washington Post interviewed 4 former colleagues from his time in Congress, and they all separately described him the same way: a sweet-talking backstabber who was obsessed with accumulating power. According to 2 former Paul staffers, Gor once discovered that a speechwriter in the office made more money than he did. The speechwriter was Elise Jordan, the widow of journalist Michael Hastings, who had died in a car crash in 2013. Gor apparently decided he wanted to take her down. So one day he pulled up a conspiracy theory YouTube video about her husband's death. and started playing it loudly in the office. He asked her, "What really happened, Elise? What really happened to your husband?" Jordan was visibly shaken and told him to stop, but he wouldn't. It's the kind of cruelty that gives you insight into someone's character, and it shows that even early in his career, Gor was willing to use personal attacks and psychological manipulation to advance his own interests. Despite these red flags, Gor's career continued in advance. He worked briefly at Fox News as an associate producer, then returned to Paul's office as deputy chief of staff. But his real break came in 2020 when he joined Trump's fundraising operation for the re-election campaign. Trump lost that election, of course. And what followed was the darkest period of his political career. He was banned from Twitter, Facebook, and virtually every major social media platform. Traditional publishers weren't interested in working with him. Many Republican donors were keeping their distance. Trump needed people who would stick with him during his political exile, and Sergio Gor was one of them. In 2021, Gor made what might have been the smartest business decision of his life. He partnered with Donald Trump Jr. to create Winning Team Publishing, a conservative publishing house that would serve as Trump's media lifeline during his exile from mainstream platforms. Their timing was perfect. Trump wanted to publish a memoir, but the major publishing houses weren't interested after January 6th. So Gor and Trump Jr. created their own publishing house and gave Trump a platform to reach his audience directly. Their first project was a coffee table book called Our Journey Together, a book that was essentially a collection of official White House photographs from Trump's presidency. These photos were already in the public domain, meaning anyone could use them for free. But Gor packaged them into a glossy coffee table book with Trump's commentary and sold it directly to Trump's base for $75 to $100 per copy. And it worked, at least financially. According to Trump's financial disclosure forms reported by Forbes, he made $3.4 million from just 3 books published through Winning Team Publishing in a single year. Our Journey Together brought in $155,000 in that period alone, and that was on top of the millions he'd already made since 2021. The second book was Letters to Trump. It earned $250,000. This one was even more audacious because it was literally a collection of letters that other people had written to Trump. So he was monetizing correspondence from figures like Hillary Clinton and Princess Diana, people who obviously hadn't consented to having their private letters published for profit. But the real moneymaker was the third book, Save America, which came out just before the 2024 election. This book made $3 million in just 3.5 months. The cover was the iconic photo of Trump raising his fist after the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, and it became a powerful piece of campaign imagery. But there was another layer to this operation that made it even more lucrative. Forbes reporter Zach Everson discovered that Republican political committees used campaign cash to buy the books, then handed them out as gifts to donors. So campaign money paid Trump's company, which helped fund more campaigns. A perfect financial loop. And while Gor was building this publishing empire, he was also establishing himself as an indispensable figure in Trump's social circle. He became known as the mayor of Mar-a-Lago because of all the time he spent at Trump's Florida club. He earned the nickname the Patio Panhandler because he was constantly soliciting donations from fellow club members. He also served as Trump's unofficial entertainment director, working as a DJ at MAGA parties throughout Palm Beach. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz, who had Gor officiate his wedding, said, "You've never been to a Sergio DJ party where a conga line doesn't break out." Gaetz described how Gor could take over the DJ booth at even the stuffiest conservative gatherings, and by the end of the night, have people jumping in pools and making out in hot tubs. This might sound frivolous, but this was actually a key part of Gor's rise. In Trump's world, personal relationships are everything. Gor wasn't just a business guy. He was the guy who kept the energy alive when Trump was out of office and off social media. And that made him indispensable. By 2022, the strategy paid off. Gore had made enough to buy a 7-bedroom mansion on the water in Palm Beach, just minutes from Mar-a-Lago. He became living proof that sticking with Trump during the tough times could be very, very profitable. Around that time, he also launched a super PAC called Right for America, which raised over $72 million during the 2024 campaign. Some insiders saw it as another hustle, a way for Gore to boost his influence and line his pockets, which is partly how he got the patio panhandler nickname. But the money was real, and it helped power Trump's return. So when Trump won in 2024, Gore was perfectly positioned to turn that loyalty into real power. Trump made him head out of the office of presidential personnel, one of the most powerful roles nobody talks about. That job gives him control over roughly 4,000 federal hires across the executive branch. Every political appointee goes through that office. It's where the buck starts and where it stops. Once Gore took over the office of presidential personnel, he made one thing clear. Loyalty to Trump wasn't an option. It was a requirement. He started running what he called loyalty tests. He'd comb through people's old tweets, campaign donations, and public comments to make sure they were fully aligned with Trump's agenda. Donald Trump Jr. even told the Washington Post that Gore didn't just care where someone stood in 2015 or 2016. He wanted to know where they were on January 7th, the day after the Capitol riot. But this is where things start to shift. The higher Gore climbed, the more controversy followed. His first major clash came with none other than Elon Musk. In early 2025, Politico reported that Gore and other White House staff were frustrated that Musk, now part of Trump's cabinet, kept making big decisions without looping in the personnel office. The tension had been simmering for months, especially after a heated cabinet meeting where Musk slammed the pace of hiring and butted heads with senior officials. Then came the breaking point. Gore played a key role in sinking the nomination of Jared Isaacman, a billionaire and one of Musk's close allies, to lead NASA. Isaacman had already passed committee with strong support and was expected to be confirmed. But Gore dug up his past donations to Democrats and used that to convince Trump to pull the plug. According to Axios, this decision was seen as Gore settling a score with Musk, who had been critical of his management of the personnel office. One senior aeronautical executive told the Washington Examiner that Gore and other senior Trump advisors saw that Isaacman withdrawal as a means of settling the score with the Tesla CEO. The feud exploded into public view on June 18th when Musk lashed out at Gore on social media, calling him a snake, and later clarifying that he was accusing Gore of committing a serious crime. For someone who had spent his entire career operating in the shadows, being publicly attacked by one of the most famous people in the world was a devastating blow. But this wasn't just Musk venting. His attacks came right as senior questions started swirling about Gore's background and whether he was even qualified to hold the job he had. Then in June 2025, the New York Post reported that Gore, the man in charge of vetting thousands of federal employees, hadn't even completed his own security clearance process. Multiple White House insiders said he never submitted the standard Form 86, the massive background check required for anyone needing access to classified material. That form asks everything: where you were born, who your relatives are, any foreign contacts, drug use, work history, and it's all sworn under penalty of perjury. The guy enforcing this process across the government hadn't done it himself. Sources told the Post that Gore's failure to submit this form was almost unheard of. Even staffers who don't end up needing clearances usually fill one out. But during the transition, Gore reportedly pushed hard against using the SF-86 at all, warning that deep state operatives could use it to sabotage Trump's hires. He even floated the idea that Trump could just bypass the system entirely, and grant clearances through executive authority. And when the Post asked him the most basic question, "Where were you born?" he wouldn't answer. All he said was, "It's not Russia," which only made things weirder. Especially since Maltese officials had already told reporters they couldn't confirm his birth there, even when given his exact date of birth. Then things got really strange. Security researcher Brian Krebs published a report suggesting Gor's email passwords matched those of a Russian man named Sergei Anatolovich Goryachev. Krebs eventually walked it back, admitting a mistake, but the damage was already done. And in Malta, local sources reportedly told journalists that people there used to refer to Gor as the Russian boy. It all added up to a full-blown scandal. The man trusted to screen everyone entering Trump's government couldn't or wouldn't provide basic information about himself. And now even his identity was being questioned. But the problems with Gor's leadership went beyond his personal background. A detailed investigation by Tablet magazine revealed that the White House Office of Presidential Personnel had filled only 1/5 of the jobs allocated to political appointees, leaving career bureaucrats running much of the government. Even worse, the investigation found that openly anti-Trump officials were being hired for key positions across the administration. For example, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard had hired officials allied with billionaire Charles Koch, despite Trump's explicitly warning in January not to hire Koch-affiliated figures. One of these hires was William Rugger, former head of the American Institute for Economic Research, who was appointed Deputy Director of National Intelligence, despite having a public record of attacking Trump's trade policies. Rugger had written tweets calling tariffs taxes on consumers and arguing that America First should include a robust free trade approach, not protectionism. Laura Loomer, a MAGA influencer who tracks administration appointments, told Tablet that every day we hear about someone extremely disloyal who's been vocally critical of the president securing a job. Meanwhile, she said, there are so many hyper-qualified Trump loyalists looking for positions who are being turned away. One tech executive close to MAGA also told Tablet that Gor is just in over his head. The executive explained that the administration is a $7 trillion institute, and Gor has no experience staffing any institution of that size or complexity. The result? What insiders describe as either a vetting disaster or outright insubordination. Career bureaucrats are reportedly saying they want political direction but need political appointees to direct staff in implementing the president's policies. Bureaucrats wanted leadership, but without Trump-aligned appointees in place, the administration struggled to implement its agenda efficiently. All of this led to a sense of chaos and concern that the administration was repeating mistakes from its first term. Without strong, competent leadership in place, critics feared that Trump's second term could start to unravel before it really began. In the end, that's Sergio Gor, a loyal aide, a power broker, a gatekeeper, and maybe the most important unelected man in Washington right now. He helped save Trump's political brand during its darkest hour, and now he's deciding who runs the country. But loyalty without accountability is a dangerous mix. And if one man's unchecked influence can shape the future of an entire administration, what does that say about the system behind it? Because if someone like Sergio Gor can rise this far, with this little scrutiny, how many more are out there quietly pulling the strings?